Good morning, friends. This morning is the 21st Sunday after Trinity. Not yet at Advent, but getting close. The intent is perseverance. It's very interesting that our founding bishops put perseverance pretty much at the end of Trinity, because not only are there many Sundays in Trinity, but the Christian path has got many goals that we've got to achieve. And there's only one way of getting there, and that's to do them. As people have said, when you want to learn something, whatever it is, you just have got to do a lot of what it is you want to learn. Perseverance. People look at successful people in life and they say, gee, I really want to be as successful as them. I'd love to be as whatever, famous or rich or whatever it is. It's really not so obvious to people when they're looking from the outside towards at somebody just how much effort is involved in achieving anything in life, anything of worth, anything noteworthy, anything that's really, really positive and that will last for a long time. And there's really only one solution, and that's perseverance. So maybe that sounds too grim, and maybe that just sounds so boring, and maybe we just want it all now. Well, that tends to be the attitude of 2-year-olds, or maybe even 4-year-olds. But we've got to get out of that 2-year-old, 4-year-old sort of reaction and realise anything of worth requires perseverance. Okay, how to get there? How do we get there to wherever it is? How do we apply perseverance constructively? Well, Christianity is a very pragmatic religion. It's got to enrich your life, otherwise it's not really working properly for you. And if it's not working properly for you, don't give up on Christianity. Have a look at what you're doing in your life and maybe adjust a few things from your side. How do we do that? Well, one way to do that is to look at collects and the Bible and just think about quietly passages. You don't have to read the whole Bible to get inspiration. You can read one verse from the Bible to get inspiration. The collect in today's Sunday, the 21st Sunday after Trinity, reads, Lord of all power and might, who art the author and giver of all good things. Isn't that a lovely phrase? The author and giver of all good things. I'm sure you've read a book in your life that is a favourite book, or something that changed your life, or made you pause, or really made you think. That book was written by somebody, the author. That author didn't know about you, didn't know what effect it would have on you, might have been hoping that was the case. But that author has freely given the book out. Yes, righto, you had to pay some money maybe, or maybe you borrowed it from the library. But the point is, from the author's side, they took the trouble to write those things down in that book so that their insights and their wisdom, perhaps, their perseverance in finishing the task of writing that book has thou influenced you, the reader. In this case, we're talking about the Creator, is the author and giver of all good things. All good things. Well, you might say, where do the bad things come from? Well, let me not keep you in suspense. They come from us. That's where they come from. Often cartoons have this. Peanuts. You know Peanuts? Maybe you've read Peanuts cartoons. And there's a favourite one of mine where one of his characters was saying, I've finally worked out who the enemy is, and it's us. Well, you had to look at the comic strip in context. But the point is, we tend to get in the way of ourselves. We all know people that are really, really good at, say, sports. That just wonderful agility, great strength, athleticism. And sometimes we see people that are all tangled up and falling over themselves. Those people who are a little bit clumsy might be really, really frustrated. They might be tempted to say, who's holding me back from being a fantastic athlete? Well, the person that's holding them back from being a fantastic athlete is themselves. They take life quietly, untangle the entanglements, who knows? So the Lord of all power and might is the author of all good things, our Creator. May our hearts be so filled with gratitude to Thee that we may continually increase, now here's an interesting phrase, that we may increase in true religion. And from Thine omnipotence may we draw strength to persevere. Omnipotence means power, infinite power. The Creator has infinite power. So we won't get tied up in all sorts of philosophical ideas about how big is that infinite power. We just think the Creator is carrying things forward. The evolution of life carries things forward, and we are part of it. And we are carried forward from a power source, from an energy source, which is omnipotent. Now, how do we increase in true religion? I wonder what this true religion is. Well, for Christians and for other members of other faiths, other spiritual faiths, it's finding the Christ within. For us, the Christ within. For other spiritual traditions, the God within, of some description. The point is, we are more than just what we see of one another. We are much more than just our bodies. We are much more than our emotions. We are much more than our thoughts. We are part of God's creation, and part of God is within us. Seeking that part of God within us, that spark of the Christ, that's the true religion. That's what we should strive for. And how do we go about that? Through perseverance. Every day we make a little bit of progress. Every day we learn something new. Every day we learn about something to avoid. Perseverance means we remember all that, and we don't forget, hopefully, everything that we've learned as we go forward. So in the epistle this morning, read by Wendy, this is St. Paul the Apostle to the Ephesians. And St. Paul often has lists of things, and sometimes it's good to remember those lists because then we know about them. So he's got a list of all the things that you've got to prepare yourself with, which symbolically we wear. Now, I've got clothes on which I don't wear in the street. These clothes I put on to conduct the service. And as I'm putting these clothes on, I have a prayer for each of the garments that I put on. The alb underneath, it's called the instrument of light. And then I put on the chasuble of faith. And these other lists of things are symbols to remind ourselves. Now, why is St. Paul doing this? Well, St. Paul recognizes there are what he calls principalities and powers and spiritual wickedness in high places. So that sounds a bit sinister, doesn't it? It sounds a bit like something we can't cope with on our pay grade. So we might use different language if we like. Same reality, different language. We might say there are entities in the world which we might call evil and bad. But if you don't want to sort of get all worried about it and sort of start to worry about things that you've got no control over, you can think about energy. There are negative energies in the wrong places. So we know a lot about energy and stuff like that because we're very scientific and so on and so forth. We ask for protection from that. It can't hurt us in any way, but we just ask for protection for that. So we don't get drawn into it. If we allow ourselves to be drawn into it, that's a different matter. But in order to assist us from not being drawn into it, we then have these things that St. Paul talks about. Put on the armour of light. We gird ourselves with the shield of righteousness, so on and so forth. They're symbolic, but they're really, really important. And I urge you to look at that in this particular epistle. Very interesting. Then in the gospel, Jesus now is going to put all this into practice. He's been talking to the disciples, and now He's going to send them out. He's going to send them out to do what he's been doing. How did Jesus become known? How did he become so popular for a while? Why was everybody talking about him? Well, signs and wonders. He chose to do this in order to attract everybody's attention. We're all asleep in sort of different ways, and we need to wake up. We need to wake up and adopt the true religion as something we do every day, meaning every day we get closer and closer to the Christ within. So Jesus had to wake everybody up that was in front of him. Wake up. This is the gospel of the truth. Now listen, this is what I'm going to tell you. Now, in order to get their undivided attention, what did he do? Healed lepers. This is a disease which can be cured with antibiotics in this day and age. In that day and age, once you became a leper, you had to isolate yourself from the community, from your family, everything. And you were driven out. You were driven out to keep away. No one understood it. So he is curing this disease. He is curing people with all sorts of strange behaviour. We've got different languages for it. We call them sort of bipolar or something or other. All those different words. Psychotic. They were just called demons. He was driving the demons out. 1 minute, they were strange, contorted people with foul language coming out of their mouth. The next minute, poof, gone, and they were back to their old self. Very dramatic for anyone watching it. Jesus did this. Now, he's saying to his disciples, I'm going to give you this power now. You're going to go out in twos, and you're going to go out into the villages, and you're going to practice. Remember this. Jesus said, remember this, where this power is coming from. Don't get above yourself. This power is coming from the Father. Jesus says, when I speak, you hear my voice. It's coming from the Father. When you do these things, remember where it's coming from. I am giving you the power. The Christ is giving you the power. So he goes out and he gives them, he says, you're going in the midst of wolves. Beware. Be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Lovely expression, isn't it? Be harmless. Be harmless. Evil cannot touch the harmless. So, wise as serpents, harmless as doves, the power to heal. And they went out and they healed. The people who wanted to be healed were healed. Then Jesus finishes this passage by saying, this is the way I want you to conduct yourselves. Remember, when you see me, you see the Father. When you conduct yourself, think of me, and my words come through you. Don't worry about what you're going to say or do. Let the words come through you. And that's a marvelous heritage. With perseverance, we can bring all that sort of understanding into our lives. Whether we're good at whatever it is, that understanding and that expertise comes from our ability to walk the path and get closer to Christ. Think on these things during the week. Think on the advantages of perseverance. Think about how that could enrich yourself. Think about what the true religion might mean in your life.